The NHL is officially on the four-nation face-off tournament break, but we still have lots of news to discuss today, including our first look at the international teams. All teams had a chance to practice today. We'll take a look at how Canada, USA, Sweden, and Finland looks to be setting their lineups and how their lines seem to be being put together. We have the 3 stars of the week, news from the NHL waiver wire, including a claim, some more injury updates, plus some trade talk around a variety of teams. New information today regarding the Toronto Maple Leafs, Montreal Canadiens, Seattle Kraken, the Blues, the Senators, as well as John Gibson maybe heading to Edmonton. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Of course, today is the beginning of the four-nation face-off tournament break, so there's no hockey for the next couple of days. Our next games involving NHL players will be on Wednesday when we have Team Canada playing their first game of the four-nation face-off tournament against the Swedes. Of course, then Thursday night, we have the Americans playing the Finns. So no NHL games for the next little bit, but there's still lots of news. Of course, it's only the first day of the break, so there's still more news coming out. We're going to talk about the four-nation tournament here coming up, but first, a couple other quick items. The NHL, of course, announced its 3 stars of the week, which they do every Monday. The 3 stars for last week's NHL action included Lightning forward Brandon Hagel, Canucks goaltender Thatcher Demko, and Florida Panthers forward Matthew Tkachuk, all having substantial performances for their NHL clubs. We also had an NHL waiver claim today. The Los Angeles Kings had veteran defenseman Andreas Englund on waivers. He's in the second year of a contract, so he'll be an unexpiring deal, making $1 million. Has been claimed by the Nashville Predators. Now, we know the Predators have, I think they have a couple of blue line injuries that they're dealing with here right now. We've seen that blue line change a little bit throughout the course of the season, but Englund should be a pretty good fit there. Somebody who can come in and play a reliable role and obviously give them some more physicality. I do wonder as well about some other trades involving Nashville. We haven't heard a whole lot around the rumor mill regarding them. Obviously, a lot of their players do come with term. They were one of the busiest teams in the NHL in the summertime, signing some big names. I don't know that any of those big name new contracts like Stamkos or Marchessault or anybody like that is likely to be dealt. Or Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi. Those guys are all likely staying put, but the supporting cast there could certainly see some change. And I'm wondering if maybe we could see more change on that blue line, which might be why they've picked up Englund. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, lots of things can happen. There is no roster freeze during this four-nation face-off tournament break as well. And according to NHL reporters and insiders and even players, they feel there's going to be some trade activity during this break. There's not a ton of games once NHL hockey resumes. Most teams have about 5 or 6 games between the return and the trade deadline. So it's not really a lot. It's only, you're looking at less than 2 weeks of hockey after the NHL goes back to work before the deadline. Teams obviously at this point already, for the most part, except for the exception of 1 or 2 teams, know if they're buying, selling, and if so, what they're looking for or what might be available. There's not a lot of questions except for a few teams, which I know if a few games are really going to make that much of a difference for teams, they probably shouldn't be buyers, but you just never know. We'll have to see how some of these teams react. Some other news around the league here as well. Vancouver Canucks, of course, the goaltender Thatcher Demko. We're not really sure on the injury. We know he was hurt in their final game before the break. He played the first 10 minutes after looking like he tweaked something in warm-up. And all we know at this point is that he's definitely injured. He's going to miss time. If it wasn't for the four-nation break, he definitely would be out of action right now. The only thing is that all they're saying is it's not the knee or the hip, which he's had issues with in the past. It looks like it could be a groin issue. We really can't say it's a serious problem, but we can't say it's not. So there's no way to know because the team's not really talking. So there's no definitive way to say, rest assured he'll be ready when the team comes back after the four-nation break. It's just not really clear or obvious on that front. Of course, the four-nation face-off tournament, of course, is only a couple days away from having the first action. All players were reporting to Montreal today. The teams were getting their first ice times for a chance to skate and practice as a group. We did get word Sidney Crosby is officially good to go for Team Canada. He was probably the only player remaining amongst the 4 teams, especially of high prominence here, that had a little bit of uncertainty over whether or not he would go and whether or not he would play. We knew he was going to Montreal today, and he was going to skate with the team, consult with doctors, and see how he felt. But he not only did he go to Montreal, but he was a full participant in their practice. He looks like he's going to be in the top 6, play on the power play. He did everything in the drills, and it says he's good to go. So I suspect whatever he was dealing with, at the very least, even if he's not 100%, he's close enough that he's able to fight through it and not really be too affected by it. At least that's how things look right now. Of course, like, they don't have a strenuous schedule either. They play Wednesday, then they don't play again until Saturday, then a few days. They've got 2-3 days between games, so it shouldn't be too tough of a schedule for Crosby to kind of deal with here. Now, of course, like I said, all teams had a chance to take to the ice today. Lots of reporters are there to cover the tournament, so there's lots of video, lots of reporting coming out of that first sessions today. Team Canada, for those that are interested, looks like they're going to line up like this. Their top 6 is going to include your top 2 lines being centered by Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby. So the first line, well, it's not really a first line, but your top 2 lines, McDavid with Sam Reinhart and Mitch Marner. And then you got the other line in the top 6 will be Sidney Crosby with Nathan MacKinnon and Mark Stone. I mean, that to me makes a lot of sense. McDavid's line, you've got the speed, you've got the smarts with Reinhart, who can play in all situations. He can be defensively responsible. Like I said, incredibly smart. He's a sniper, goal scorer. Marner's the playmaker, obviously a good skater as well. And Marner's also pretty good defensively, kills penalties and such with the Leafs. So, in all honesty, those 2 wingers are going to give a lot of case for McDavid, to be on the ice and not have to worry about likely with turnovers and, all the other such. So that should be a very effective line. Crosby and McKinnon together is going to be fun to watch. Obviously, you had Mark Stone, who's got one of the best sticks in the league for takeaways. Very good two-way player. Obviously, somebody who scored tons of big goals here as well. McKinnon brings the speed. Sidney Crosby with the experience. Stone, obviously, not the fastest by any means out there, but certainly a very, very smart player. So again, a good mix of smarts, skills, speed, shooting, and all that on those top 2 lines. Your third line seems to consist of Braden Point with Brad Marchand and Seth Jarvis. So they'll likely get an assignment of playing against some of the other team's top guys. Obviously, Marchand and Jarvis are probably going to be, by the looks of things, on the PK. The fourth line will be Cirelli with Hagel and Bennett. Travis Konechny is also on the team. I'm not sure if he's going to be the 13th forward or not. He was not on the ice today due to being ill. He was battling an illness, so I don't know if that'll affect where he fits in the lineup, or maybe that's where he was slot anyway. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see when maybe if he's on the ice tomorrow and if there's any line juggling here. But, really, you got all kinds of skill up and down that lineup. The back end appears to be no real big surprises. You got Taves and McCarr together. Shea Theodore's partner with Drew Doughty, or he would have been with Pietrangelo. So Doughty comes in as a replacement and takes his spot there. And then Josh Morrissey and Colton Parayko seems to be the third pair, with Travis Sanheim being the 7th defenseman. So I know on the power play, they were looking like they had Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Nathan MacKinnon, Sam Reinhart, and Cale Makar on your first unit. That's absolutely insane. So good luck stopping that. But at the same time, other teams can have a pretty good power play as well. But that might be the most potent. I'll be curious to see how effective it is. Just because something looks phenomenal on paper doesn't mean they're going to be able to execute at the level you'd think. But it's certainly going to be very interesting having a look at it. Now, on the Team USA side of things, their top 2 lines are going to be centered by Eichel and Matthews. No big surprise there. They have Jack Eichel lined up with Kyle Connor and Matthew Tkachuk. And then they have Austin Matthews with Jack Hughes and Jake Gensel. So again, you've got a good mixture there of size, speed, skill, to some degree with Tkachuk, like the ability to play in the corners and play a little bit more gritty. So that's some interesting lines there. Your third line is going to consist of Brady Tkachuk, JT Miller, and Matt Boldy. Tkachuk and Miller together could be a real nuisance for teams. You throw in Boldy, who's a different style, but somebody who can score goals and be effective in other ways. And then the fourth line right now appears to be Vinny Trocheck with Dylan Larkin and Brock Nelson, with Chris Kreider, the Rangers, being the extra forward. The D pairs right now look like Jacob Slavin with Adam Fox, Zach Werenski with Charlie McAvoy, Noah Hannafin with Brock Faber, and the injury replacement Jake Sanderson coming in for Quinn Hughes. Today skated as your 7th defenseman. Sweden, now they have a pretty good looking lineup as well. I'm not sure though that to be completely fair, I think Canada and USA have more stacked lineups than Sweden and Finland. Finland's dealt with a lot of injuries already so far. Actually, for Finland, we don't even have a projected lineup because they did not have their full team on the ice today. They only had, from what I had seen, about 11 players on the ice. So that's not going to bode well. There's obviously less time to practice. I'm not sure what was going on with that, but I know I've seen reports that Finland only had, unless maybe they were, maybe that was early, maybe there was other reports, but I couldn't find anything else to show line rushes or anything else for Team Finland. But the Swedes, on the other hand, they had Mika Zibanejad with William Nylander and Rickard Rakell as one of your top 2 lines, along with Elias Pettersson, Adrian Kempe, and Philip Forsberg being the other line in the top 6. So, again, that's pretty good lines, but your highest score, I believe, amongst the group is Jesper Bratt. They have him on the third line, Bratt and Raymond, being flanked by Joel Eriksson Ek of Minnesota. So that third line could be really sneaky good. I'd be curious to see. I can see them even outplaying some of the top 2 lines, to be honest. And then Elias Lindholm of the Bruins is your 4th line center, being flanked by Victor Arvidsson and Gustav Nyquist. Your D pairs are Victor Hedman paired with Jonas Brodin, Rasmus Dahlin with Rasmus Andersson, so the Rasmuses are together. Then Matthias Ekholm of the Oilers paired with Erik Karlsson. So obviously, some interesting lineups there. We'll have to see if things change or not. Tomorrow, the Americans, from what I could tell, did not practice special teams today. So it's not quite clear how things are going to go. But we did get a look at the Canadian power play, the first unit, second unit, and I believe on the PK. I'm pretty sure Marchand and Jarvis was one of the groups for penalty kill. And I think Hagel and Sorelli might be another as well. So we'll have to see where things go from there. But first day of skates, tomorrow will be another day, and then we have games on Wednesday. We also got word today that newly found free agency for Jesse Puljujarvi has come to an end. He signed a tryout agreement with the AHL's Charlotte Checkers. So I know a lot of people thought he might be heading over to Europe. That's not the case. Puljujarvi's time in North America, not over. So it goes to Charlotte, which is the AHL affiliate for the Florida Panthers. So he had played a few games in the American Hockey League with the Penguins affiliate. Did okay. Put up, I think he had like 3 points in 4 games. So we'll see if this leads to a further contract and if it'll be just an AHL deal or a 2-way deal. Hard to say right now. Now, lots of information on the rumor front for trades. Like I said, right now, teams aren't playing, so a lot of teams, managers and assistant managers have time to be talking trade and getting ready for the trade deadline. Like I said, Elliot Friedman on his 32 Thoughts podcast today made mention that from what he's heard, even from players and executives around the league, it's expected. I'm not sure how busy it's going to be, but we're not going to get through this break without there being at least a few trades. They talked about the fact that the NHL would prefer that anything, real substantial maybe not happen on game days. We know Gary Bettman likes to spread the news around, so to speak, to get the most eyeballs as possible on the game and the headline. So we'll see. I know a couple of updates. One on the New York Islanders. Of course, we've seen reports that according to, I think it was Chris Botta was reporting that he has sources indicating that management, including Lou Lamoriello and his son Chris, who works there as an AGM, have full autonomy right now to make all the decisions around the trade deadline and player personnel decisions right now. I know there's a lot of people with the Islanders fan base that would like to see Lou step aside, be fired, what have you, to get a new regime in place. And I've been pretty vocal saying I think it's needed in the worst way. This team has been mediocre, whatever you want to call it, for 4 to 5 years. It's been a little while since they've had a decent playoff run. I think that this team, when they were under Barry Trotz, got the most out of it. And since then, it's hard to imagine. There just hasn't been enough turnover. Brock Nelson is by far the biggest, most likely available player, but there seems to be a big debate on whether or not he is going to be re-signed or traded. There's belief that the Islanders and Lou would like to re-sign Nelson. Now, of course, given his age, it's not going to be a 7 or 8 year deal. It's believed that the Islanders, over this Four Nation tournament break, will be trying to take a stab at signing Nelson to a 3-year contract. Now, we know that Nelson has been a career-long Islander, has lots of friends on the team, has enjoyed his time there. So there's no reason to think he won't consider it. But there's also lots to believe that, that if he does hit free agency, that a team like Minnesota, or even Winnipeg, which would get him as close as possible to home, would provide him with a contract comparable or better than what the Islanders are going to offer. So it's still not clear. And of course, Nelson, a goal-scoring centerman, having a bit of a down season. We know Bill Guerin, who's the GM of the Wild, obviously a big fan of Nelson's. Even though he's having a down season, he still selected him to play for USA in this Four Nation tournament. So clearly, that's why there's a lot of people that think that there's a possibility of him going to Minnesota. Some, including John Buccigross, said it was the worst kept secret in hockey, that there's definitely an affliction between the two and that it could be something we see in free agency. So I'll be curious to see if Nelson officially hits the market, trade market, and then he'll end up signing somewhere else in the offseason, or if they do come to terms and sign him, which I don't think is good at all. As much as I understand the loyalty, sometimes this roster needs turnover. They need to get younger. They need to get faster. They need to be more skilled. And some of these players have put in a lot of good time with the franchise. I get it. It's hard to let go of your players who put in so much time and effort to make the team successful over the years. But it's time to get something recouped here. And I think Nelson could have a big enough value at the deadline to get a pretty decent return. So that's my take. All the talk around Noah Dobson as well being available. According to Elliot Friedman, he doesn't think the Islanders are really out there shopping Dobson. He said that he had heard his name out there in the rumor mill a couple of months ago, didn't bother reporting on it because he couldn't verify enough of what was going on. He says basically at this point that the belief is that Dobson's name has only come up in some trade conversations that they've had revolving around a substantial deal, bringing in another big name. So they're not out there shopping Dobson, but for example, the belief is they did have some pretty serious conversations with Vancouver around Elias Pettersson, and that Dobson's name was brought up and at least discussed or thrown around in a potential trade for him. Now, of course, we know that deal has not materialized. Maybe the Islanders were reluctant to move him, or perhaps it was more of a case because, to me, like I said, if you look at the Canucks blue line, I don't know that he's a great young defenseman, right shot. I know there's lots to like about his game. I know some Islanders fans have been frustrated with him, but I've said before, as much as I can see them maybe trading him, and that partially has to do with his new contract that's going to be coming up here soon as well, but Vancouver, to me, just doesn't make the most sense. He's not going to be on the first power play. He's not going to be getting the offensive opportunities like he would normally get and to be able to thrive and justify what he's looking for in his contract and to bring out the best in his abilities. You look at Hughes and Hronik, or the 1-2 on that team. Is he going to be a third defenseman on that? I don't see the fit. You've got Marcus Pettersson they just signed. They brought in him, and he's playing with Myers right now. Myers won't be there forever, but still, you're not going to put Dobson with Pettersson, and Dobson's not going to get the kind of money he's looking for. It's not going to be the greatest fit. I just don't see it. So, and at the end of the day, that's probably why things never really proceeded. Now, what else was in those deals, we don't know, but as Friedman said, he believes that it's only been a case of, star players that the Islanders have had conversations around, like Pettersson. His name has been brought up. Otherwise, he's not being out there actively shopped. So at this point, I would suspect the idea of Dobson being traded is probably pretty slim. Probably not happening. So for the Islanders, it's mainly going to be around Nelson and Palmieri, unless they do swing a deal for something substantial, which appears more likely in the summertime. But we'll have to see. Like I said, it's always tough getting information out of the Islanders front office. Of course, now another big topic on the 32 Thoughts podcast today was John Gibson, the Anaheim goaltender who's been in and out of the rumor mill, like I said, for the last couple of years. Friedman says that he believes that Gibson, who does have some trade protection in his contract, would love to go to the Edmonton Oilers or the Carolina Hurricanes. That seems to be the main places he would want to go. But he also says it's under his understanding that he would want a shot and an every opportunity to be the number one guy. If Edmonton brings in a guy like Gibson, are they going to trade Stuart Skinner? I would suspect probably not. Now, if you're Anaheim and you trade Gibson, you have Lucas Dostal there, who's been a phenomenal young goalie and is definitely the goaltender of the future. You probably wouldn't mind a goalie back, but you're probably not looking for somebody who wants to be a starter. You're probably looking for a decent backup, perhaps, like maybe a different kind of backup goaltender. So, like, would you maybe take Pickard in that deal? Maybe. I stress maybe. I'm not sure how they feel about Pickard, but it would be that type of goalie that they would look for in return, not Skinner. Skinner and Dostal, to me, just doesn't. If they both want to be a number one, I just don't see how that's going to work out. And I'm not really sure that Edmonton really has enough lost faith in Skinner to get rid of him completely and bring in a guy like Gibson. I mean, can I see them maybe seeing if they find a way to upgrade over Pickard, to have a more, I don't know, maybe a more of a goalie there to push him for starts? I'm not sure. I honestly, to be honest, I think the Oilers probably don't make a goalie move. I'm not sure it's going to happen unless they trade Skinner separately. But again, late in the season like that, I'm not convinced that's going to happen. But, Gibson to the Oilers seems to be his first preference. The Hurricanes are another interesting team. But again, what's going to happen? And, is it going to work out for him to go to one of his teams he wants? I don't know. Now, another player to watch, a variety of players on this team, the Blues. Friedman talked a lot about Blues captain Braden Shen today. Talks about how he feels he could be a good fit with the Vegas Golden Knights, but he also mentions that the Ottawa Senators had previously kind of sniffed around and kicked tires on the Blues captain as well. I believe that would date it back as late as last season after Steve Staios took over. So obviously, we have a scenario here where we know the Ottawa Senators likely do want to add, and they definitely would like to add a middle six scoring forward with experience. Like Shen would tick a lot of the boxes that they're looking for. However, from a cap perspective, I think it would be tricky. And secondly, the asking price on Braden Shen appears to be quite high. So as much as the Ottawa Senators are, interested and have shown interest in the past, and I can see the fit, I think it'd be really, really tough for them to pull off. Now, Friedman also mentions the Vegas Golden Knights with the connection to, of course, Kelly McCrimmon, who had Braden Shen Jr. into Brandon Wheat King. So there's that old junior connection. We've seen McCrimmon bring in a lot of players that he had that junior connection with from his time in Brandon before. Type of player that we know Vegas would love. And Vegas always seems to be creative and figure out a way to get the players they want, even though sometimes it's very complicated salary cap-wise. So again, no guarantees, but a couple of teams that we can link to Shen in that case. Now, Frank Saravalli, when it comes to the Maple Leafs, has made mention that he's not entirely convinced that they wouldn't consider trading Max Domi. He said even though Max Domi signed a fairly long-term extension in the offseason, he says Domi should be put on notice that he could be dealt as the Leafs try to upgrade and get ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs. He says essentially that Domi hasn't lived up to the contract and that it wouldn't be shocking to see them try to move on. Clearly, he's a seventh forward amongst Leaf guys that have the most ice time. So certainly Berube, it's not like he's completely benched him or anything like that. He's still getting the opportunities, but he needs to produce more. He's had a very, very down season after signing a fairly lucrative contract. So again, he does have some trade protection, but not a lot. There was I came across one article with a mock trade, which suggested that the Leafs and Kraken become trade partners here for a couple of things. One, it could be, it's hard, not going to be all of them, but between Yanni Gourde, Brandon Tanev, and Jamie Alexiak, that all three players you could argue would be a great fit with the Leafs. Gourde would give them that centerman that they're looking for. Now, he's injured right now, but is expected back after the Four Nation Faceoff tournament. Tanev, of course, pretty good bottom six forward with good speed, nicknamed Turbo, brother of Chris on the blue line for the Maple Leafs. So you'd have a brother connection there. Alexiak would bring you that big size and strength on the blue line that they, would love to get more of. Now, the mock trade article that I came across had Gordon Tanev going to the Maple Leafs for Max Domi, Connor Timmins, and Topi Niemela. But I would also consider, and we know we've heard enough before to suggest Nick Robertson could definitely be had. I wouldn't rule out Fraser Minton as well. But if they can hang on to Minton and Cowan to get their business done for the deadline, would be preferable. Just depending on who they trade for, might be difficult to do. So again, some combination of Gord, Tanev, Alexiak, the Kraken do make a ton of sense to be where Toronto sets their sights here for trade deadline upgrades. So we'll have to see where it goes. Not a given that Domi is going to be wanted by the Kraken in return. I don't know what the teams that he can block, if Seattle would be one of them. It's just one of those guys that, people seem to think, and Sarah Valley makes a good point here, I think, that Domi hasn't really been a great fit this year, hasn't been a great contributor to the success. He signed a lucrative deal. And maybe the Leafs are having regrets at this point. And could they consider moving him as far as deadline upgrades? It's not something that's, it's not a crazy enough idea to say it's not going to happen. That's for sure. So another player to watch there. We'll have to see. In Montreal, based on comments from Jake Evans after the Canadiens' last game before the break there against the Tampa Bay Lightning, he was speaking when asked what it's meant to be a Montreal Canadian and talking about his time there. A lot of his comments were sounded in past tense, saying how it's been an honor to be a Montreal Canadian. Just the way he was talking sure sounded like he's expecting to be traded. We've heard reports from Pierre LeBrun here in recent days that the two sides are nowhere near each other in terms of a new contract, that they've exchanged numbers, and that Evans is looking for a lot more combination of money and term than the Montreal Canadiens are prepared to offer right now. And that, with a lot of the Montreal Canadiens pending UFAs, they have a lot of youth coming up that they don't want to restrict and block out of spots. So, they expect David Savard, Christian Dvorak, Yoel Armia, and Jake Evans. It's quite possible all of them could end up being moved. It's quite unlikely that any of them are re-signed at this point. So we will see what happens. But just in Evans's comments, it was interesting to note that he just sounds like he's expecting it at this point. We know previously he's been linked hard to New Jersey. Now Tom Fitzgerald, the GM of the Devils, has personally been scouting Montreal. Now, of course, we also know that he'd be in Montreal for the Four Nation tournament as well. So could he have been there early? The Devils played the Canadiens just a couple of days before the Lightning did, so it's not like he wouldn't have seen them firsthand anyway, but getting an extra look, he really makes you wonder about the Devils and their pursuit of Jake Evans, and maybe that might be where he goes. But again, hard to say. We know there's going to be deals, or there's going to be moves made here during this break to get ahead of the actual deadline, because most teams only have 5-6 games back after the break before they have to make decisions and have their deadline business all taken care of. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.